How you doing, guys? Big Mac Dan Squirrel here again today, back once again with another episode of my Warhammer 40,000 Conquest series for you. Today we'll be taking a look through the halfway point issue number 40. So, issue number 40 of Conquest. What do we get in it? We get 3 paints. Now these 3 paints come to a grand total at GW's current pricing of £10 and 15 pence. So you're looking at a £2.16 saving. Bam! I got that out of the way well quicker than I normally do. And I'm talking about it more and how I got it out of the way quicker, which is wasting time. So let's crack on with the issue. What do we get inside the pages of the issue? We get some details about Marneus Calgar. We learn how to paint with layer paints and some new warlord traits for both sides. Turning to the first page, it's all about Marneus Calgar. The forces of mankind boast many mortal heroes, without whom the Imperium would surely fall. Even amongst their ranks, there is one warrior more noble than the rest. His victories are without number, and his deeds the stuff of legend. His name is Marneus Calgar. I think that's disputable, debatable. I think if you were to pick out one hero of the Imperium, if I was to pick out one hero of the Imperium that stands above all the rest, and I think the lore suggests this as well, for me it's Dante, not Marneus Calgar. Most other chapter masters will step aside if Dante's there, and Dante will quite often lead campaigns in the Imperium's name, joint campaigns between different chapters. It happened on Armageddon, I know that for sure, and I think it's happened on other occasions as well. And Dante is effectively the head of the Imperium Nihilus, which is I think it's the Imperium Nihilus beyond the Great Rift. So I think that's debatable, basically. But Marneus Calgar is a heck of a Marine for sure. He's also a Primaris Marine now. He was around before Guilliman was reawakened, and before the Primaris Marines came into use. But he has now been Primarisized, and in that process it tells you in these first 2 pages here, I'll flick over to the next page, in that process it tells you that during the process of Primarising, he died on the operating table, and then luckily was revived. Not necessarily luckily, they worked on him and they got him alive again. They woke him up again. So, it talks a little bit on the next page about some of his war gear as well, the gauntlets of Ultramar in particular, and how he won them after he defeated a Chaos Champion in single combat. He's got an integrated bolter on each gauntlet and a power fist as well. So, onto the next page, we've got Daemon Princes. It talks in great detail here about Daemon Princes, specifically Nurgle Daemon Princes on this first page. And this artwork here, this is some of the artwork that divides people, and people's opinion of Nurgle differs on this. But to me, this is some of the artwork that turns me away from Nurgle, because it's the distended head, the massive belly and stuff like that. I understand that's what the god is, but it can quite easily look goofy when you sculpt a miniature with that, a bulging eye like that and one horn coming out of the head, massive chubby jaw, 82 chins and stuff like that. It can end up looking goofy. I've come round to it a bit in my later hobby years, but I was always put off Nurgle, not because I thought it was gross and disgusting, but more because some of the miniatures look goofy, like with the big grins and stuff like that. I'm not a huge fan of the jolly comedic side of Nurgle you see sometimes, but it is, it's all, there's a rich history of lore there, and there's reasons for all of these things. So maybe it's just I know it is just me being picky on certain occasions. But that's the Nurgle Daemon Prince. You can get that from Games Workshop. You can also buy a more generic Daemon Prince, and if we turn the page, it shows us the image of the generic Daemon Prince there as well. It's the generic Daemon Prince kit, which you can specifically put certain parts on to make it look more Khornate, more Slaaneshi, more Zechian, or just a generic Demon Prince. So if it's if you've got a Black Legion force, for example, they are Chaos Undivided. They don't prescribe to one particular Chaos God. So yeah, that's the Daemon Princes there. And it talks about how Daemon Princes don't necessarily come from the ranks of Space Marines. They're not necessarily the mightiest heroes. They get rewarded for offerings they make to sometimes a particular Chaos God, sometimes to all Chaos Gods, and that's how they become these immortal demons. And often they end up selling their souls, and they're tied to that god forever. So it's some of the pitfalls of selling your soul. On to the next page, where we get how to paint Space Marines highlights. We're using the paints, the layer paints that we've got in this issue. So we've got let's just talk about them slightly. We've got the Liberator Gold, the Stormhost Silver, and the Wild Rider Red. The Liberator Gold is a highlight for your gold. We've been painting with Retributor Armour base paint so far, and then painting the Liberator Gold on the edges gives you a nice little highlight effect, which is really simple to achieve, and the paint guide just takes you through the stages of that and gives you some nicely detailed pictures. You can see really easily on this first picture of the Stormhost Silver as well, where they've gone over the lead belcher on the edges of the lead belcher with the Stormhost Silver. It gives you a really stark highlight, that one. And then Wild Rider Red as well, over the Mephiston Red. It gives you a nice, an edge to that crease in the cape there. And then it's more of the same over the course of the next 1, 2, 3 pages, 4 pages, 5 pages. Yeah, so it's 6 pages of painting guide in total. And then we get a slightly more detailed miniature at the end of it. There's obviously more layer paints to come in future issues. We need a layer paint for the blue, probably. We need layer paints for the bone colours, for fleshy colours, for all the various other colours that we've had so far. We've had base paints for. I imagine we'll be getting layer paints for most, if not all of them, in the coming 20 issues. So, moving on to the next page, which is the gameplay section. It starts the gameplay section. We've got, as it's stated on the front, we've got more Warlord traits here. Now, the Space Marine Warlord traits, there's 6 to choose from. Again, as in previous issues of the magazine, when they give you 6 of something, they say you can either choose which Warlord trait you want to use, or you can roll for it. So they've got Angel of Death, the Imperium's Sword, Iron Resolve, Storm of Fire, Rights of War, Champion of Humanity. Certain Warlord traits do certain things. Some are better than others depending on how you want to use your character. For example, the Angel of Death Warlord trait, the effect of this is subtract 1 from the leadership characteristic of enemy units within 6 inches of your Warlord. So he's this like terrifying Angel of Death that's he's slaughter incarnate kind of thing, carving his way through your teammates there, through your allies, through your battle brothers, and you find him so terrifying that you want to run away from him. So it makes it more likely that the miniatures that are within 6 inches of him will fail morale tests. And just to pick out another one, Iron Resolve. Add 1 to the wound characteristic of your Warlord. In addition, roll a dice each time your Warlord loses a wound. On a roll of 6, the Warlord shrugs off the damage and does not lose the wound. So effectively he gets what we used to call a feel no pain roll there, and he gets 1 extra wound as well, so that can be really handy for certain Space Marine characters, the extra wound. Your captain or your librarian might be targeted in particular by your opponent, so any character you want to keep alive, obviously if it's your Warlord you want to keep him alive anyway because your opponent can sometimes gain advantage from killing your Warlord, then you want to give them that Warlord trait. Moving on to the next page, it talks in a little bit more detail about the Storm of Fire Warlord trait and the Champion of Humanity Warlord trait, and it gives you the diagrams as it always has when we've had these new rules. It gives you the diagrams explaining how these rules are put into effect. Onto the Death Guard Warlord traits. So again, it's 1 to 6. You can pick one, or you can roll a dice and get one. Let's take a look. There was one that I wanted to talk about here. Living Plague. You may remember not too long ago, a few issues ago, I spoke about a character, I think it was the Plague Surgeon, who even if you're in combat with him, that's a danger to you basically. So you're likely to come down with an infection, a pox overtakes your body, and you lose wounds throughout the battle. It was a bit of lore that didn't have a rule, didn't have an appropriate rule attached to it on the tabletop. So if, for example, your plague surgeon was to be your warlord, then you could give him the living plague warlord trait, and the effect of this is roll a dice for each enemy unit within 3 inches of your warlord at the start of the fight phase. On a roll of 4+, that unit suffers a mortal wound. So that's a rule appropriate to the lore attached to the plague surgeon. So that's the kind of rule that they could have for the plague surgeon. And if you wanted to tell that story on the tabletop, you could give that warlord trait to your plague surgeon, just to make it more in keeping with the lore. Moving on to the next page, it's the same sort of thing. We get 2 warlord traits discussed in a little bit more detail, and the diagrams, the top-down diagrams, really explain in simple terms how they work. I'll just run through one. Is it one Constitution? Yeah, we're on Constitution. Reduce all damage inflicted on your warlord by 1, so it reduces the damage by 1. So in this case, the plasma guns are firing at him, and they have a damage characteristic of 2. There's 3 wounds suffered, which would have been 6 damage in total had your warlord not had that warlord trait. But because it reduces the damage of the wounds suffered by 1, then it's only 3 damage. So he loses 3 wounds, not 6 wounds, which he may have lost had he not had the warlord trait. And then onto the mission briefing. This time it's Storm the Walls. I'm not going to read it really. It's a lovely. I was going to hold it up, but I'm trying the green screen thing again. It's a lovely bit of lore here, and a lovely bit of artwork to go along with it, to be fair as well. There's Captain Asheran and Lieutenant Calcius are in discussions about they have to storm the walls of this governor's palace in the city of Brachius, and that is what the mission revolves around. Flicking over to the next page, we get the Palace Siege, and it's one of those missions where it's like a campaign mission. You play it multiple times, in this case 7 times, and depending on the number of victories you have as the Ultramarine player or as a Death Guard player, that's who wins the campaign overall. Preparing for war, battlefield. So we get another piece of 2D terrain in this week's issue. I think these pieces of terrain are fantastic, but this one comes with rules attached to it as well. What the Space Marines want to do in this battle is basically attack the palace, like we just said, but also destroy these gates, get these gates open so that they can storm the palace and clear out the Death Guard that are holding this palace. The palace gate has a toughness value of 8, it has 12 wounds, and it has a 4-up save. Now, although the toughness value of 8 is very high, so really it's only strength 7, strength 8 weapons really are going to do it a fair bit of damage. So you're looking for things like power fists, and your plasma guns will do it a bit of damage as well. But you're looking for high strength weapons to target this gate, you'd think. But although that's the case, that they'll damage the gate more easily, I suggest just concentrating your firepower. So even your bolters, aim them at the gate, and because everything wounds on at the least a roll of 6 on the dice. So it's worth targeting it with your bolters, in my opinion, because it has 12 wounds, so you've got to get them wounds down as quickly as possible to get the gates open. There's a Death Guard deployment edge of 6 inches on the side where the gates are, just at the bottom of that T-junction there, and the Space Marine deployment zone is on the opposite end of the battlefield. Moving over to the next page, this battle is massive in terms of the number of units we've got involved. So we've got the similar number of starting units or the same number of starting units exactly to the last few battles we've had. We've got 5 units on the go from the start for both sides. We've got 5 Plague Marines, 12 Poxwalkers, Lord Felthius, a Tainted Cohort, and the Noxious Blightbringer for the Death Guard. And for the Space Marines, we've got 5 Intercessors, 3 Hellblasters, 3 Aggressors, Captain in Gravis Armour, Lieutenant Calcius. So it's 5 units against 5 units. But then we've got reinforcements in this battle. And the reinforcements, you pick one of your reinforcements to come in every turn. Players may add 1 unit from their chart during their movement phase. Yeah, so that's your reinforcements. You pick 1 unit to come in every turn. I'd get that Redemptor Dreadnought in there for the Space Marines as early as possible because of that Power Fist. And also it's got a high rate of fire weapon in the Gatling gun. And it's got a flamer which can take out things like Poxwalkers quite handily as well. But yeah, so for the Death Guard reinforcements, you've got the Foul Blight Spawn, the Mephitic Blight Hauler, Malignant Plague Caster, and the Plague Surgeon. I'd probably bring in as early as possible that Mephitic Blight Hauler in anticipation of your opponent, the Space Marine player, bringing in that Redemptor Dreadnought, because the Blight Hauler, don't forget, has got that melter gun, that multi-melter, and it's got a rocket launcher as well, so it can do some damage to the Redemptor Dreadnought there. For the Space Marines, the reinforcements are the Primaris Librarian, the Primaris Chaplain, Primaris Apothecary, and that Redemptor Dreadnought, like I've said. The deployment zones are, as I discussed, 6 inches either end of the map. Both players roll off. The player who wins a roll may choose who deploys the first unit. Beginning with the player choosing to deploy first, take it in turn to deploy a unit at a time until all units are deployed on the board. That's different to last week's when it said whoever wins the roll-off places their army down first, or gets to choose who places their army down first, and then the opponent places their army down. But this one is a unit at a time, which in my opinion is a better way of deploying. The player who deployed the last unit takes the first turn. Victory conditions: the Death Guard player gains 1 victory point for each enemy unit that is slain. Both players gain 1 victory point for slaying the enemy warlord. The Space Marine player gains 6 victory points for destroying the palace gates. The Space Marine player gains 3 victory points if a friendly unit is within 1 inch of the palace gates at the end of the game. The game lasts for 5 battle rounds. So because that number of wounds on the palace gates is 12, that's why I think you should just concentrate firepower. If you destroy the gates, you get 6 victory points at the end of the day. So you've got 5 units in from the start, and then you've got 4 more coming in. How many of them will drop to the Death Guard fire? Once you've got them gates open, you can start actually firing on the Death Guard as well, and trying to reduce their effectiveness against you. So I'd definitely try and take those gates out as early as possible. Anyway, the Governor's Palace. So looking over at this next page, it talks about the 2D piece of scenery we've got here. It's basically like an access ramp to the Governor's Palace. It's got the Aquila on there, and then the metal grating that leads up to the gates. It's really nice bit of 2D terrain there. And we also get, for use with the gates, some wound tokens in the back page of this issue as well, which is fantastic in my opinion. Moving on to the back page, we get, in issue 41 and 42, the Plague Burst Crawler, which is fantastic. It's a £40 kit, not 35 like I said last week. I don't know where I got 35 from. I feel like GW just sneakily put the price up by £5 after I looked, but probably not. It's probably just me not being thorough enough. Yeah, so it's a £40 kit, so £20 worth of kit in each issue. Again, it's spread over the 2 issues, 41 and 42. It's something to look forward to, and it's a great way to kick off the next 20 issues, issue 41 to issue 60. That's all I've got for you this week, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the battlefield.